So tell us about what Unknown Spaces is and how it's become such a big part of the outdoors movement of clothing.
Yeah, so Unknown Spaces really started as just a hobby and a passion project to advertise kind of my own personal tastes and the clothes that I was into and what I was collecting at the time. Naturally, that took flight on Instagram as one of the sort of early archive pages, just as a place of storage that people could follow along if they wanted to. And I mean, honestly, like I really didn't expect so many people to be into the outdoors movement, but I mean, I have to put it towards like the global lockdowns and everything, and people being stuck inside their houses and just wanting to experience a bit of escapism and to see what the world was, what's happening outside and everything. And the environmental sort of side of Unknown Spaces really gave people a chance to experience that from their phones and inside their houses.
It almost seems like it was a motivating factor for people once they had realized what it was like to be stuck in their homes, to get this opportunity and see what else was out there and to really get into nature. And I know a lot of people have definitely moved towards, casual trail hiking and things of that nature, and have definitely come along the trend of outdoors wear for sure.
Exactly. Like, I feel like so many more people are just sort of getting outside and experiencing trails and hikes and walks and running and those sorts of activities. Because of the sort of outdoors wear movement. Yeah,
definitely. What's involved in the maintenance and the growth of a page like this? I think that a big part of what allowed the outdoors movement and the Gorkcore movement to get so big was there was this element of organic growth to it, where accounts like yours really help propel it and push it forward and provide like a much larger movement, at least from a social media perspective. What do you think you did differently to allow yourself to grow and become one of the authorities in these spaces?
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of page like maintenance and stuff like that, as anyone who has Instagram as like a job or a business or something, it's a lot of grinding and like scheduling and posting consistently and that sort of thing, and also posting consistently high quality content that people want to engage with. So it's an everyday thing. Honestly, sometimes it gets like a bit of a grind, but I wouldn't do it if I wasn't so like happy, enjoying the time and keeping up to date with the space and the creators within it, and just staying up to date with all the things that I'm already really interested in.
Absolutely. I mean, I think like one of the things that you just said that resonated with me was that it makes you happy, and I think that it makes a lot of people happy, and that sort of follows on to looking at the big stars that are actually following your account and the cut through that it's had. And I've noticed that Frank Ocean's been a long time follower of yours, and he is also a huge fan of Arc'teryx. We've seen him at a lot of fashion weeks in Europe and around America, wearing Arc'teryx before it became a huge trend. That's pretty cool. Like, tell us about that.
Yeah, honestly, man, it's still really, really cool to me, and blows my mind a bit, honestly. Connecting with like long-term idols like Frank and other designers in the space it never gets old. I think we connected a couple of years ago now, around the time that I think it might have been a fashion week in 2020 where he actually was wearing some really nice Arc'teryx gear. And I still have DMs tagging him in those pictures in the Instagram stories, and then when we sort of chatted here and there later, I still see them above, and
amazing.
It's a funny moment. Yeah,
crazy. Gorkcore and outdoors wear, the same concept, but why do you think that this has become such a cultural phenomenon in fashion? I mean, we've never really seen this before, where someone will be walking down the street wearing some hiking shoes and like pairing that with some like really high-end fashion pants or a t-shirt, or it's entered into this high fashion realm. It's such a bizarre thing because, we look back on it when we were kids, it's like our dads would wear like some hiking boots and that would like embarrass us because that's like such a nerdy thing to do, but now it's like that's the coolest trend in fashion. Why do you think it's had such cut through and such a good reception as it's grown into high fashion?
I think it's a lot of what the kids these days will see their idols wearing. Like we mentioned names like Virgil Abloh and Drake and Frank Ocean and those sorts of people, incorporating it into their sort of daily wear. And on the runway, obviously Virgil had the iconic like the blue art jacket, which did the numbers on Instagram and everything. And I think when that sort of infiltrates and drips down through the sorts of pages like my own, it's just a matter of time until those who are sort of already fashion inclined, perhaps in the more traditional senses of fashion, like high fashion scenes or streetwear, they're always going to be interested in the next sort of movement that's coming through. And it's just not really a surprise that really cool, incredibly well-made gear like Arc'teryx just takes people's eyes and really offers them a different sense of what fashion can be. It can be hiking shoes, it can be a Gore-Tex jacket, it can be anything anyone sort of wants it to be.
Absolutely. You mentioned Drake and Virgil Abloh and these influencers or these highly influential people who were caught wearing Arc'teryx right at the start of when Arc'teryx sort of made its way to the top of the Gorpcore and the outdoors wear scene. What are your thoughts on the idea that, these guys are, I suppose it's a safe assumption to believe that they're not really trail enthusiasts or they're out here rock climbing or anything like that. These two people really helped the ascent of Arc'teryx, at least in the streetwear scene. What are your thoughts on the idea that they're not really in that scene but are sporting this brand? And I think it's particularly interesting because Arc'teryx is so true to their ethos, which is that they service the mountain athlete. They're not actually trying to be a part of the Gorp scene, but they just happen to be moving in that direction because of how influencers are wearing it.
Yeah, it's honestly, I think, a natural evolution of these sorts of brands as they get more attention outside of their space. As we all know, in today's sort of social media climate, anything can be put on social media within seconds, and that sort of just infiltrates spaces that perhaps they wouldn't usually sort of interact with. And I think it's a positive, honestly, for the space to see creators like Drake and Virgil and stuff taking ideas and evolving them into things that otherwise would never have happened. I know a lot of people in this space are sort of like, oh, this brand is ruined because so-and-so wore this or so-and-so wore that. Whereas I think it's just fascinating to sort of observe these interactions between these names and these brands that nobody would ever think would sort of mesh together like that. So
yeah, absolutely.
I'm all for it, honestly.
100%. Yeah, I mean, I think irrespective of the influences that have sort of like infiltrated into the brands, I think the fact that brands like Arc'teryx still remain so true to what their ethos is, and they haven't let the idea that, the people like Virgil Abloh and Drake get involved like super heavily into the brand. They still just continue to do their thing and service people who are true to the outdoors. They're just allowing that to sort of go on in the background and be at the top of Gorpcore in a really organic way. And I think that's something that's really special about the brand in particular.
Definitely. I think that's what continually sets Arc'teryx apart from the rest. And I think anyone would agree that, at least in the current trend, Arc'teryx is on top of everyone in terms of influence and quality and sticking true to the ethos that it was formed around. Is just a testament to a brand that's, I think, over 30 years old at this point, that they're still able to produce the products that they do and still target those like outdoor professionals and mountain climbers and hikers and even ice climbers and stuff like that, and also have an influence over kids who want to go for a walk in the park or through their city or just go to a club or something and just rock some Arc'teryx gear.
Yeah, I think that's also another really interesting point you raise, is that when you look at what Arc'teryx has really become, as we mentioned before, yes, it is definitely mostly designed for people who are really in extreme conditions. But when you look at it from a Melbourne point of view, or other key metropolitan cities around Australia and around the world for that matter, you'll see it in the culture scenes now. You'll see people in the club wearing an SV jacket or hooded up, even people like Skepta and a lot of grime artists, they'll be wearing the brand just in music videos, and it's really entered into the grime scene. So it's really interesting to see how it's permeated all the way through culture, with Arc'teryx not really meaning to push the brand in that way. So a really interesting observation for sure. When you look at people like Drake and Virgil Abloh, just to circle back to the influence that they've had on the brand and the way that they've helped the brand grow, there's no doubt that they've had an impact on that, but it takes more than just being caught in a few pieces from a brand to really stretch and allow for a brand to be around and so culturally, not just so culturally relevant now, but to have been at the top of their game for decades and decades. What do you think it is about Arc'teryx that is so special?
I think there's just an inherent quality to the brand that continues to impress even long-term fans of the brand, I think. Sort of no matter what they're releasing, it's always to the highest standard in manufacturing, I think, as well as materials and design teams, and there never seems to be like a trip up or a mistake with what they release. Everything is super well considered. It's really just a testament to a brand sticking with their guns, I think, and continuing to create just the top level gear.
Do you think that, just like circling back to the conversation of quality and garment construction, and the upcycling of material and utilizing the highest quality materials, do you think that that's something that the consumer has now become really interested in, and that it matters to them? Or do you think that that's just sort of like a side thing that happens to be associated with a brand like Arc'teryx? Do you think that people are more interested in just the logo itself? Or do you really think that actually they purchase these things because they know they're going to get something that's going to last them forever?
I think it comes back to that the modern day consumer definitely wants more value for their money, I think. And when you're purchasing a jacket from Arc'teryx, you know it's going to outlast even maybe your interest in what you're doing, I think. It's going to stick around. It's going to wear itself like completely out before it loses all use, I think. Kids like, and anyone I guess in the space are really just interested in getting maximum wear out of what they're into, I think, and Arc'teryx fulfills that outdoors utility, practical use. It also fulfills that streetwear aesthetic that, as you said before, like mentioning artists like Skepta and the grime scene in the UK, like it's just doing numbers like in all sorts of aspects of the brand, I think.
Absolutely. It's truly really special, and I think particularly for our generation, who we've sort of come up with grime becoming a really important part of not just the UK culture and how that's become attached to Australian culture, but the music scene as a whole, to really see how Arc'teryx has become such a key piece to the fashion element of it. It's really cool to see that. I guess when you sort of look back on the way that kids wear Arc'teryx, and whether they're using it for trail purposes or for outdoor purposes or for just for a fashion statement, I think there's a really like tongue-in-cheek element to it, because it's obviously, as we mentioned earlier on, is that Arc'teryx is solely designed really for the outdoor enthusiasts and the people who are doing the most extreme things in the outdoors. But these kids will spend north of $1,000 to get their hands on a jacket from Arc'teryx. But they kind of own that. They're kind of like, well, I don't use it for this, and they're not shy to state that. And I just think I think that that's a really unique part of what sort of bands the outdoor community together. Can you sort of just talk to us about this community growth part of the Gorpcore fashion category?
Yeah, for sure. Like, honestly, I try not to take things too seriously in most of how I live my life, and this sort of outdoors wear golf course scene is really no different. Um, like I think anyone would sort of own up to or admit to the fact that like they're not wearing their jacket solely to go hiking all the time. Like I would I would assume that actually quite a low percentage of people um, might be using it for that purpose, which I think honestly it's fine. Like if you're going to be looking to get an Arc'teryx jacket, it will hold up in just about any situation. I think the community sort of embracing that is a huge part of the popularity behind Arc'teryx as well, because you can wear it to go down to the store and grab a carton of milk, which is like a meme I've posted like 1,000 times because it's true. Like people do that. I've done that. But you can use it as well on the trail, obviously, or for like a serious hike. Like one of the sort of jokes or memes that I come back to is like that same jacket is used to go to the store or like go to the club or have go to the pub or something like that. And then someone around the world, like across the globe, is literally using it to climb a mountain or go on like an Arctic expedition or something like that, which it's so much fun.
Yeah.
I don't think any other brand is really doing it the way that Arc is doing it like that. Yeah.
I think that's funny because not only it seems like community is something that's really important to you, and that tongue-in-cheek comedic element of the outdoor community and the outdoor realm of fashion and what's associated with it. You see a lot of these hilarious memes running through your through your page and things of that nature. So can you tell us about how important community is to you and how important it is to Unowned Spaces?
The community aspect of Unknown Spaces, it's like essential to everything that I do, really, because there wouldn't be a following without people who want to engage and like the posts and comment on them and share their opinions, which I am so interested in. Like when people comment what they think, even if they're like completely bagging something out or like making fun of something, or they just dislike it or hate it or something, like I almost care more about that opinion than people just sort of agreeing with me and being like, oh yeah, like I think this is cool too. Like the only thing I kind of try to ask people is like, oh, like can you go into it a little bit more as to why you dislike something or why this isn't something you're as into, and just give like more solid answers. But yeah, the community aspect is essential. It keeps me going, honestly. Yeah.
I've noticed you also do things like you'll do like a hashtag Unowned Spaces, and you'll direct people to tag it to sort of like feature in your page. I feel like this is like a main way that you're sort of like looking to really engage the community and get them involved in the Unowned Spaces brand. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. Like, as you'd know from following it, like I rarely use hashtags, if at ever. But I do use them in those kind of posts to just see what people are doing out there and like where they're at in the world, even just kind of ask where they're living, how they're living, what they're doing with their gear and stuff, because being in Australia, like we don't always have access to incredible like snow-capped mountains or like volcanic parks in like Norway or something like that. So I mean, it's just the wonder of like social media and Instagram to be like, hey, what are you guys doing out there? And to have like hundreds of people come back to me being like, I just took this jacket and these shoes up like a glacier or a volcano or something like that. I'm just like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's just a great way for me to connect with what's going on. Yeah.
Have you ever, I don't want to expose you here, but
Go for it.
Are you a trail guy yourself? Are you sort of an outdoorsy sort of guy? Or are you one of sort of like the fans that follow your page and just like more associated with the brands as opposed to actually doing what they're meant for?
No, I appreciate the call out. Like I do actually go on trail walks and go on hikes and try to use my gear wherever possible. Like if it's raining or if it's really windy. I think in terms of like living in Australia, we don't really get as much rain as some other places. So something like a windproof Gore-Tex, like two layer or 3-layer material is like essential for just surviving, I think, because you get some really cold like southerly winds coming into like South Australia and Melbourne and those sorts of places. Like, so I mean, I do get out a fair bit, not as much as I would like, as the kind of work grind kind of gets in the way sometimes. But compared to some of the people in the space, like that I've connected with, like, yeah, I think I get out a fair bit. You'd be surprised, some names on Instagram who have fully admitted to me that they just do not hike. They just like wearing the sort of outdoors gear, which is fine,
Yeah.
but it's funny to me. Yeah.
What do you find exciting about this trend? And what sort of keeps you motivated and engaged to keep pushing for your Unknown Spaces page to continue to help it grow and propel it forward?
I think what most inspires me to keep posting and to keep content creating around the outdoors trend is the way it intersects and kind of bleeds into the other fashion scenes as a whole. Because, I mean, as we both know, you and I sitting here, we're into brands and clothes and fashion and that sort of thing. It's always really interesting when two sorts of scenes kind of intersect with each other and create something different. As we were talking about before, like high fashion runways sporting like trail shoes and hiking boots and those sneakers and stuff like that on just like a level we haven't seen before. Is fascinating to see, like what's coming up next, how the scene's going to keep evolving. And I think possibly the most interesting part of it is kind of the people that I've met as the scene has evolved in the last few years, to see what they kind of do with their interest in the space, and if they're creating a product, or if they're doing a collab, or if they're styling a shoot or something like that. It's so interesting to see like this person that 3 years ago had less than a few hundred followers is now collaborating with a brand like Arc'teryx or Salomon or something like that, and making something new is just like it's just really cool to see. Yeah.
Circling back to the idea of community and the growth of the community and the very, very unique style of the type of community that exists within the Gorkcore movement, there's so many different other Instagram profiles that have a similar vibe and are archival pages in the same way that Unknown Spaces is. You've got your organic lab.zips and your curation techniques and your advanced research. Are you guys all friends, or do you sort of just acknowledge that you each exist and go about your Instagram profiles as such?
I personally like to think we're all friends in the space, which is such a testament to the scene and the shared interests. I think on just like even just a base like interest level, we can all get along so well just off like what we enjoy together, I think. And as I've sort of engaged more with the pages, like other pages and their creators, like individually, you kind of see like, oh, this creator's more into this sort of a thing, and this creator's more into that, and there's more of a shared sort of enjoyment of other sort of cultural points like throughout the space. And yeah, as the space is still so niche, I think that over the years, like you do get close with these other creators and these people across the globe, and I think it really like ties in that sense of community when you can post on one side of the planet and they're posting from the other side and sending each other DMs and likes and stuff like that. It's so much fun. Yeah, so I'm totally down with everyone in the space, I think. Yeah.
That's great,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that just all goes back to the community vibe that exists within the space.
Yeah.
It's truly indicative of the support that everyone has for each other, and that people aren't really taking it too seriously, but really enjoy the culture behind it. And I think that's the most important part, and what Arc'teryx has really helped us all learn and become tolerant of.
Definitely. I think I, for one, I'm a big advocate of not taking anything too seriously. Like the past 3 years that we've all been through, like just like try to enjoy it and enjoy the time we have and make some friends and make some cool stuff and just take it a little less seriously. There's so many things we already have to take pretty seriously. Like we can just enjoy what we're doing with our clothes and with our jackets and pants and shoes and stuff, and have some fun. Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah.
What do you sort of see for the future of this trend? I mean, I think the key word is trend, and I think something that's associated with the fact that things are trends is that they eventually fade away. Do you think that Gorkor and the outdoors movement is here to stay? And what do you sort of expect to see from it as the years progress within a fashion context?
I definitely think there's a trend element to it, and there will be those people that come and go, and they sort of migrate into the next fashion scene as things just continue to evolve and people grow older and their tastes expand and those sorts of things. Though I think the outdoors wear scene itself, though, will always exist, I think, and Arc'teryx and like brands will always be at the sort of center point of those communities, because at the end of the day, unlike quite a lot of other brands, I'd say the majority of fashion, there is a practical use case for the clothes. Like, if people stop enjoying them for how they look, they still have an endless sort of use case to get outside and enjoy the rain and the hike and the wind and the sun and those sorts of things. So those communities will always continue to exist, I think, and perhaps they'll even grow more popular and larger as people who started maybe in a fashion interest sense will realize that they actually have a lot to do with and a lot of interest in being outside and climbing and hiking and running and those sorts of things. Yeah.
So it's Arc'teryx forever, hey?
I reckon at this point there's some collabs that I reckon there's some collabs they should avoid, but at this point I think, yeah, they've done everything they possibly can do to just further cement themselves as like just titans in the space, honestly. Yeah.
Awesome. Unknown Spaces, thank you so much for joining us today here by the Merry Creek.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Thank you.
Thank you.